This was absolutely insane. Just days ago in Rio de Janeiro, and keep in mind, this is still Brazil, the Brazilian police killed 24 people and, lost an officer in a raid in a favela where there was, the police alleged that it was a drug dealing den or whatever. And they literally rolled through and it was like some crazy, like video game, I guess, where they just went in and just shot all these people to death. And of course, it was a shootout. Don't get me wrong. The people shot back. But police targeting drug traffickers raided a slum in Rio de Janeiro on Thursday, and at least one officer and 24 others died after being shot. 24 others. The civil police's press office confirmed the death of the cop and alleged 24, quote, criminals in a message to the Associated Press. A police helicopter flew over the Yacarenzo favela as heavily armed men fled police by leaping from roof to roof, according to images shown on local television. One woman told the Associated Press she saw police kill a badly wounded man she described as helpless and unarmed, who they found after he fled into her house. Wow. So there was a man wounded, and they just kept shooting him. Philippe Curie, a detective in Rio's civil police, denied there had been any executions. Quote, "There were no suspects killed. They were all traffickers or criminals who tried to take the lives of our police officers. There was no other alternative," he said during a press. There were no suspects killed. They were all traffickers or criminals. So the dehumanizing language is insane. Police had to struggle to enter the favela because of concrete barriers built by the criminals, according to the detective. Shooting spread throughout the community. During the operation, several people Curie described as criminals invaded neighboring houses trying to hide. 6 were arrested, he said. Insane. Absolutely insane. So, the people were shocked by warlike police raid that leaves 25 dead. I mean, just look at this image. Look at this image. That's insane. It's absolutely insane. So this is what it's like in Brazil. This is what it's like in Jair Bolsonaro's Brazil. And the conflict apparently dragged on for hours. Just really something else. Quote, "Really grim moment in Brazil," said Robert Muga, co-founder of the Aguirape Institute, a Rio-based think tank that tracks trends in violence. These shootings are obviously routine in Rio de Janeiro, but this is unprecedented in that it's the operation that has generated the largest number of deaths ever. He called it, quote, "a dangerous reminder of the persistence of police violence in Rio de Janeiro and Brazil." Wow. That really, I mean, this is rough, guys. This is really rough stuff, and it really does remind of the past in Brazil, and the military dictatorship that used to rule over the country. And I'm personally trying to learn about a lot more about this. I'm about to transfer for a history degree in the fall to a college nearby, and I am hoping to, I really want to have the encyclopedic understanding of all this stuff, especially South America and its history of dictatorships and, right-wing hegemony and violence. Terrible, terrible violence. And that gets me, we should add this in here. Kamala Harris was on a Zoom call with the president of Mexico. I believe this was this today? And so Harris urges cooperation to stem the tide of migrants in meeting with Mexico's López Obrador. And let's just hear what she has to say.
Sure, I don't need to say, but I will, that Mexico is our closest neighbor, and we share a border, of course, but we also share the values of dignity and respect. We share the bonds of family, and friendship. And we also share, of course, a long, deep, and complex history. Our nations face serious challenges, COVID being an obvious one, economic repercussions coming from the COVID pandemic, as well as the surge of migrants arriving at our shared border. Together, we must fight violence. We must fight corruption and impunity. It is in our country's mutual interest to provide immediate relief to the Northern Triangle and to address the root causes of migration. You and I have discussed before an understanding and a belief. Most people don't want to leave home. And when they do, it is often because they are...
So she just said that the countries need to work together to address the root causes of migration. And still, I talked about this last week, that there's no recognition of the part that, frankly, American foreign policy and the State Department and the CIA have played in disrupting democracy in South America. Of course, all across the world, including the entire global South, but South America specifically. I mean, we were just talking about Brazil, and the Obama Justice Department helped facilitate the bogus corruption investigation into Lula da Silva, the former left-wing president, right? Operation Car Wash, which now the corrupt Supreme Court judges they're under investigation. All kinds of crazy stuff going on there. The Biden administration has been working behind closed doors with Bolsonaro specifically. And we see the havoc that's being wrought across Brazil, where it's the most number of COVID deaths after the United States. Police are running through, just shooting up dozens of people, killing dozens of people at once. It's dark. It's really disturbing. You guys should check out the website Brazil Wire, BRASILWIRE Wire. This is a long opinion piece that I recommend. Inspired by Trump, Bolsonaro is far worse. She opens with a quote from Naomi Klein. Disdain for women's bodies and disdain for the earth are deeply connected. Both remind idiotic baby men like Bolsonaro and Trump that they are part of a web of interdependent life and not the lone heroic figures they pretend to be. Oh boy, my cats are making some noise. My beautiful wife is home. Hey, baby.
Hi.
And so she's home early from work. That's cool. And my cat, I will scoop up my cat in a minute, though. Let me continue with this story. So, I mean, she talks about the similarities between Trump and Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro and Trump have promoted similar policies towards the natural environment, and this Trump is to coal mining and offshore oil exploration, what Bolsonaro is to gold mining and cattle ranching in the Amazon. Bolsonaro supports the miners regardless of the environmental damage their exploits may cause, just as Trump supported his embattled coal miners despite the cost to the natural world. So yeah, loosening environmental regulations, supporting police, punitive police violence. Trump famously had that. What was it? The Antifa shooter in Portland. He sent U.S. Marshals to go assassinate that guy, basically. One of the writers for Brazil Wire was on This Is Revolution podcast. That's Jason Miles' show. Let's listen really quick to a clip from that this is specifically about Brazilian police violence. And I want you to really listen to this and pay attention. He doesn't mince words. And we have Pascal Robert, the co-host, asking the question. Pascal is really great. Let's listen to this.
So, Mike, do you think that after Bolsonaro, assuming that he loses, that...
Oh, I'm going to get an ad. Gosh.
Brazil's with fascism would be over? Or do you...
Okay, so here comes the ad. Let's let that play. Jeez. Congratulations to Jason and Pascal for getting monetized. They're up to 1,780 subs, so good for them. If you haven't, go sub to This Is Revolution podcast. Incredibly based takes going on over there. But I'm going to back it up so we can hear some more of that question again.
Bolsonaro, assuming that he loses, that Brazil's flirtation with fascism would be over? Or do you think that, like in America, that the tide has changed so much that it's a specter that can't be avoided?
Well, I think fascism never left in Brazil, and you just have to look at what the military police, what they do. Like, Brazil never, when the dictatorship ended, everyone got amnesty, and they never demilitarized the police. And now, like, the Workers' Party submitted 3 constitutional amendment proposals over the last 20 years to end the military police. They never had more than 22% of control of Congress. Their more conservative allies always blocked it. It's a historical fight of the Workers' Party to end the military police. They've never managed to. It just shows how little control, really, like someone like Lula actually had over his government and everything. When you think he had 22% of Congress, they were unable to stop the military police. And when the dictatorship ended, the two official political parties from the military dictatorship were allowed to just change their name, and all of the congressmen and senators just got to stay in office and run for election normally in the following election cycle, and they kept control. And they still control the House and Senate. These parties that are directly connected to the dictatorship. So there's never... What's happened, though, the only change that's happened is I've always known people who are sympathetic to fascism.
This is in Brazil.
Always had, met people they wish the dictatorship would come back, and it was always like 20%. And the police are fascist. I mean, you look at the special forces.
The police are fascists, he said.
In São Paulo, the Rota, that's a death squad. And in Rio, they're...
He just called the São Paulo police squad, or police, a death squad.
Their symbol of the special forces is like a skull with 2 swords pushed through it. That's what's on the side of their cop cars and stuff. It's like they never fascisted the police. So
the police literally have a skull and crossbones symbol. That's their emblem in that part of Brazil. Mad respect to This Is Revolution podcast for having Brian Meir, I don't know if I'm saying that right, of Brazil Wire on their show. I learned so goddamn much about Brazil and what's going on there just from that one interview alone. I would go listen to that if I were you, guys. But, keep in mind, this is what has been really, I don't want to say keeping me up at night, but kind of, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've been reading about it and just trying not to get too paranoid. But counter revolutions by right-wing, military dictatorships in not just South America. You have Chile, you have Argentina, you have Brazil, you have Ecuador, you have Guatemala. People were just disappeared. The police, the military, sometimes you couldn't even tell which they were, if not one or both. They would literally just disappear people. The desaparecido, they call them. The disappeared. In Argentina, they have a social, movement group that is grandmothers of children who, basically the mothers of women who were stolen and disappeared while they were pregnant, and disappeared, meaning they were murdered, and their babies were given and adopted out to people sympathetic to the dictatorship in Argentina. So, I mean, the crimes and the evil it's immeasurable. It's thousands, tens of thousands. And once you consider what was done in Indonesia, in the coup there in the 60s, the capital was Jakarta in Chile before Pinochet took power. They were literally writing on the walls, "Jakarta is coming." That's what this book I'm reading, The Jakarta Method, is about. So the right will use violence. And we see the American right sowing seeds of this, like and stuff like this. The wave of GOP anti-protest bills will criminalize protesters and sabotage police reform too. I'm talking about the laws that Republicans have passed to make it legal to allow people to hit protesters with their cars. In the wake of widespread George Floyd protests last year, Republican lawmakers across the country flooded the zone with so-called anti-riot bills. Last month, Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed into law the draconian, quote, combating public disorder measure that expands the definition of riot to mean a violent public disturbance involving 3 or more people. Increases the penalty for participating in a riot and gives the police the discretion to decide what a riot is and isn't. The criminal aspects of this bill are already illegal, Florida Agricultural Commissioner Nikki Fried said. It protects no one, makes no one safer, and does nothing to make people's lives better. It's simply to appease the governor's delusion of widespread lawlessness. According to the International Center for Non-for-Profit Law, there are 69 anti-protest bills across the nation. These proposals vary, but many of them expand the definition of rioting in such a way it can potentially entrap peaceful protesters while increasing penalties for unlawful assemblies, offering civil protection for people who injure protesters, like, say, individuals who ram their cars into demonstrators on the street. Guys, think about Kyle Rittenhouse. We had Republican politicians saying Kyle Rittenhouse for president. There were, right-wing companies making Kyle Rittenhouse did nothing wrong shirts, free Kyle Rittenhouse. This was a kid, a 17-year-old kid with a gun he wasn't legally allowed to have, gunning down leftists on the streets of, Kenosha, Wisconsin? Kenosha, Wisconsin. The idea that this could not happen here, the idea that that the American right wouldn't somehow assassinate leftists, as we've seen in many South American countries, labor leaders assassinated, murdered. That's nonsense American exceptionalism. That's just thinking, we're special and better somehow than other places. It could absolutely happen here. It has happened here. And the right, when Kyle Rittenhouse happened, the right responded with glee and with boom headshot type of stuff, right? At least the far right, of course. If I want to be fair, I don't like to turn off people who might be in the middle or lean conservative in some ways. But when I talk about the right, I'm talking about the right, right? No pun intended there. In the comments, have you seen the doc, The Act of Killing, about Indonesia? No, I have not. I need to check that out. It's insane because they use the police. Once I finish the Jakarta Method, I'm going to do a review. Every time I finish a book that I think is important and y'all should know about it, I'm going to do a review. I want to do book reviews on this channel, and I'll share quotes from the book because they're insane. They're insane. They're terrifying. Like people in Bali wading through, literally a field of human remains looking for the bones of their missing relative. Because of their religious beliefs, they have to, it's very important to them to have the remains. And they're literally picking up skull after skull looking for their disappeared father or brother or uncle, It's insane. Ginger World 69, nice. Wait, no, not nice. You tricked me. Okay, devoid reality, 20s and 30s U.S. labor struggles. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The right assassinated people. The 60s, assassinations of Black Panthers and bombings and all kinds of stuff. Ginger World, Political Pain, you need to listen to Honduras now. Thank you. I will check that out. Antonio's family is from Argentina. Too bad he left. Well, I mean... So at some points, can you blame? Can you blame them? Why they'd want to leave? Let's see. Trump and Biden. Janger World again. Trump and Biden both recognize Juan Guaido as the president of Venezuela. Maybe that would be a good start for Kamala to recognize the reasons for migration. Yeah.